But as you look 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we know that our constituents in Pennington County will be looking very, very hard for water, quality water, and volume of water. You know, our communities within Pennington County are going to really appreciate being able to feel confident when they turn on the tap that quality water is going to be there. And so it means a tremendous amount to the constituents in the future.
From our perspective, another source or an additional source of water would help mitigate the effects of drought, um, support the growing needs. There will be a time within our service area that the current sources will not keep up with the rising demands, and we need to plan for that. But another source will just help with the overall sustainability to meet the present and future demands. Um, Put us in a better position to distribute the demands of the system and achieve overall water security.
First of all, I'd like to quote Kevin Smith, the former Public Works Director of the City of Sioux Falls, when they were going through the issue of getting the Lewis and Clark pipeline into Sioux Falls. He said, "Water is the fuel of economic development." I think it's also true. It's the fuel of sustainability. I think one of the things that we're really concerned about is having enough water to sustain the community that we have. And this is not a unique problem to our area. Like all over the West, having sustainable source of water is really critical.
Sometimes people ask me, what's wrong with our water? I said, it's not a function of what's wrong. It's that we don't have enough for our long-term future. I said, hey, wait, Western South Dakota, we need to make sure that this part of the state also has water for the future.
And that's really what kicked off this whole study and effort. When South Dakota Mines came back, they did some scenarios about high water and precipitation periods, average. But what really caught everybody's eye was during drought periods. And that even with the current population, during a severe drought, there could be a shortage of water. One of the topics that kind of came as maybe not a surprise, but an unusual finding that we have seen in 5 Black Hills counties is many as 350 separate small water systems. And all of them usually are one well or one pump away from not having water for the homeowners that might be in that any given area.
We do see that often, that people are coming to us asking for, trying to find a solution of how to get that quality water to where it really needs to be. And it's probably not necessarily something that the government has to take care of, but we certainly need to be there in assistance with those individuals.
Well, I think the biggest thing that comes forward as we look at the data for the small systems really is the number of the systems that are out there. And looking forward, again, we go back and we talk about sustainability. Doesn't matter what you build, but there's a life expectancy to everything that's out there. And to me, the biggest challenge, for those small systems is going to be as they need to start doing some capital improvements and replacement of their infrastructure as it ages. The cost of water, pretty simple to calculate. You take your costs and you divide by, the population or the water volume. And, for those systems that aren't growing, to me, they're going to have some significant financial challenges that they're going to have to face as they have to start replacing this infrastructure. So that's one of the things that really, popped out to us, and starting to look at how, could you start serving those, or grouping them and working with them to help them deal with some of those challenges and bring them inside of a system with a larger population base to help spread costs over. That to me is one, thing that I think is gonna be a significant challenge. Not just the small systems in this area, but really across, the region and the nation. That is going to be a major, major challenge as our infrastructure continues to age. And that's where we started with this project, looking at all the water systems, looking at their historical data, trying to find all the population resources that we could. So we were looking at both water demand records and population records. And generally, they will correlate with each other. Also looking at the population growth, and I know here in the Rapid City metro area in Pennington County, the recent growth in population has been, 2 to 3%, and that's a really significant growth rate. Not necessarily something that we would project out over a 50-year. To maintain that over a 50-year period would be really, really challenging. But we did a composite analysis of each individual system, looked at the populations of all the water systems out there, all the communities, looked at it at a county level and, did a projection, and what we settled on, both the water record and the population record was showing us about a sustained 1% growth rate. So that's what we've projected out over the 50-year period, and taking that population and correlating that to a water demand, that showed us what we thought we would need for a future use.
One of the things I think is an area of great concern is the central core of the hills, where many of these small communities like Hill City and Custer and Keystone, are basically getting their water from fractures in the rolled rocks. And, that's for them to continue to come up with enough water to sustain growth is gonna be a real challenge. I think Rapid City's gonna be fine, except in these extreme periods, because they've got so much conjunctive use. But outside, you go especially into the central hills, I think there's crisis looming out there.
And that's been validated by some of the work that USGS has done. As they're breaking out their analysis, they've identified 9, separate zones, and they're looking at each one individually to look at the vulnerabilities inside of that. So there might be some regions where we say, your water availability in your area is good for 50, 75, maybe 100 years. In other areas, we may say your vulnerabilities are, much more imminent than other areas.